Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great and following the 3H's of the channel. And in this video, it's all about truckers, long haul truckers, driving encounters, and things like that. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, pull up a stump with me and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So this isn't something that happened to me. It happened to my friend's dad, who used to be a trucker. So my friend's dad was driving trucks back in the 1970s. It was way less restrictive about safety procedures. You could get away with not sleeping and driving all day long just to make more money. So as for him on this trip, he was driving cross country and he hadn't slept more than an hour in 3 days. He started getting kinda loopy, as he put it, losing track of time and hearing minor auditory hallucinations. He always maintained that he didn't feel that tired, and he really felt like he could keep going since he's on the final stretch of where he needs to get to. It gets dark outside. He's in the middle of nowhere, in the Badlands. There's literally nothing around, not even other vehicles. And then finally, he sees a pair of headlights off in the distance. They get closer and closer. He can now tell that it's another truck. It gets closer again. The truck starts to slow down dramatically for some reason. My friend's dad doesn't really know what to make of it. He thinks maybe there could be something on the road up ahead, but he doesn't see anything. So my friend's dad, out of precaution, also slows down. The truck is getting close enough to be visible. The truck starts to cross paths with my friend's dad. He notices first that they are driving identical trucks, which is kind of funny, but not at all strange. And then he sees the driver, and his heart sinks. As the other truck comes closer, he realizes what he's looking at. It's him. The same hat, the same glasses, the same beard, same clothes. Everything is the same. The interior looks identical too. The same dashboard trinkets and everything. It's a straight up doppelganger, just staring back at him with this deadpan stare. My friend's dad freaks out and jams his foot on the gas and gets the hell out of there. His adrenaline is just going haywire at this point. He's running over what just happened in his head and saying, WTF, WTF, over and over. He can't tell if what happened was real or if he imagined it. He's hoping the latter. He can't make sense of anything. He stops at the nearest rest stop. He knows that he needs to sleep, but he can't because he's terrified. He's in total fight or flight mode, and for some reason, he thinks that the other driver is going to come back for him, but it doesn't. He finally gets to sleep around daylight. So I spent a long summer in the Midwest several years back, and I haven't been back there since. I did travel a bit through Ohio, but mainly stayed in Indiana. This was for work. I found a cheap motel that faced nothing but fields. If you stood at the doorway of the motel room facing out, you'd see a large open field with some trees straight ahead, and a soybean field, I think, over to the left, and a pretty much endless cornfield on the right. These 3 fields were separated by 2 narrow roads that supposedly led into residential areas, according to the motel clerk, that is. She told me that if I drove far enough down there, I'd see some houses, but it was mainly just mobile homes in that direction. Anyways, I got off work early one night, and I decided that I wanted to explore, since I'd been there for a few weeks, and I hadn't seen much of anything besides what I could just see standing at my motel doorway. The end result, something like missing time with a gnarly headache that lasted a whole week. Basically, I started down the road between the soybean field and the empty field with trees. This was right around late sunset, so there was light in the sky. I walked a fair distance without seeing a single home. The next thing I know, I'm facing the motel again, and I seem to be on the road between the empty tree field and the cornfield. It's like I walked in a big U, or else I cut through an empty field. I have no memory of any of this. All I know is that it went from twilight to pitch black in the blink of an eye, and hours had passed, with only the lights of the motel visible up ahead. My head was pounding, and my heart was racing like I had just run a marathon. I felt like I was on high alert and ended up running all the way back to the motel. Looking back, the only thing that I can remember is that I wanted to get out of the view of the open sky for some reason and into my motel room, which I did, and then I closed all the curtains. Throughout that next week, though, I had a pounding headache on and off, so bad that I thought I was going to get fired because it was noticeably interfering with my ability to get things done at work. A couple other things happened there, but that was the weirdest one. I have to wonder, did I get abducted? My wife and I live out of my truck. Life is pretty sweet, if I'm being honest. We were in West Virginia, quiet zone camping. It was super beautiful there. Gorgeous mountain views, rainbows, the works. So it was late summer, and it was pretty hot that night. We decided that we didn't want to cook, and we wanted to check out a town nearby for some burgers and beers. So we head out around 9:30 p.m. It was pitch black, apart from what my headlights were lighting up on the road. We were on these winding country roads. So we have a CB radio and a camera mounted on my dashboard. We reached a long stretch of road that has abandoned houses on the left side. Suddenly, our CB radio flicks on and starts making this super weird mechanical sound. And then my dash cam flicks off. My radio screen also cuts off. I'm super confused, trying to figure out what's going on. My wife gasps and points in front of us. We see this huge black shape, roughly humanoid looking. It has to be 6.5 feet tall. It's on the left side of the double yellow road. It's completely black, but not see-through. It's almost vaguely cloudy. It turns toward us, if I can describe that right, as I slam on the brakes. I hear all of our stuff fly everywhere in the back. The shadow thing drops down real low to the pavement and then crawls or slinks off the road, kinda like how General Grievous from Star Wars walks on all appendages and then disappears out of the line of sight behind a bush. The CB stops screeching. Everything goes quiet. And then a deep growl comes from where the shadow thing crawled away to. I floor it. I get another mile down the road before the dash cam and the truck radio all turn back on at the same time. My wife and I sleep in town that night. The next day, we check the dash cam. The camera records in 3-minute chunks. The memory card is full of clips. It's just the last 3 minutes of our ride, repeated 50 times. There's no other clips saved. The dash cam hasn't worked right since that night. So a few years ago, I had just turned 18, and I finally got a car and my license, all around the same time. I felt like I was on top of the world. So I decided to go on a road trip with 2 of my best friends. Our plan was to go travel the mountain woods and around 4 hours away from where we live. We were going to smoke and chill. So it proceeds to get darker. We enjoy talking and listening to some music on the radio. Suddenly the radio loses connection, which is really weird. We decide to just enjoy some talking. My friend in the back seat falls asleep. Me and my friend in the front seats just drive in silence. We get near these woods, and my friend gets really scared all of a sudden. He's super calm and chill usually. I say, "Hey, are you doing okay?" And he just looks pale as hell, saying that he has a really bad feeling about this. I just tell him to stop being a pussy and chill out. But after more driving, our fuel is getting low. We stop in a sideway that's in the middle of the woods, and I ask my friend to help me tank the car. Me and my friend get out of the car. I take the fuel out of the trunk and get ready to fill up the car as well. My friend shouts, "Justin, what are you doing?" The friend who was asleep literally a minute ago is standing in the middle of the street, not moving at all. We didn't even see him leave the car. I said, maybe he needs to pee? I feel this horrible sense of dread and the feeling that we need to get the hell out of there immediately. I decide to ignore it though, because the car does need fueling, and I put the fuel in the tank as well. My friend walks up the road to Justin. Justin doesn't move an inch. My friend is around 2 meters away from him and suddenly turns and sprints back to the car. He says, "We need to go now." I say, "What do you mean? Why? We can't just leave Justin here." He says, "That's not Justin." I turn around and Justin is still asleep in the back of the car. And then I think, oh shit. I start the car and start turning the other way around. I look in the side mirror. The Justin on the road is turned around to face us now, but the proportions on his face are really off. It's like somebody painted it on with a bad brush, and he has this horrible smile on him that still makes me terrified when I think of it. We wake up the real Justin and tell him that we're not finishing the road trip, we're going back home. He says, "Guys, what the hell? Why?" We tell him the story. He doesn't believe us. Even to this day, he thinks that we're just lying about it. Me and my other friend haven't really talked about this event at all since, but I know he remembers it. Every time we look at Justin and he laughs a certain way, we all get a bit of a chill. Circa 2008, I drove over the road for a large company. I saw a few things that I couldn't explain, and saw a lot that I could. One thing that always bothered me was getting lost in the middle of nowhere in West Texas. It took place from around 1 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. Some random one-lane road with crops about 3 feet tall on either side. The sky was pitch black. I couldn't see any stars or the moon. There was zero light outside of my truck lights. I stayed at about 15 to 20 miles per hour because I didn't want to hit a deer or a cow or a drunk farmer or anything. As I was walking along, glancing in my mirrors about every 15 seconds to make sure my trailer wasn't leaving the road, I noticed on my left the crops were falling over like something was running through them, staying alongside my truck. I immediately figured that it was a coyote or a wolf or something like that happened to be running through. Basically, I wrote it off as a coincidence. Thinking nothing of it, I looked to my right and I saw the same thing, like something was keeping pace with me. I proceeded to think that maybe I was just really tired, maybe I was seeing things. I looked forward and I saw something in the road about 75 yards. I slowed down as I got closer because I didn't know what it could have been. I looked to my left and right, and I saw the crops falling at the same speed that I was doing still. The closer I got to the thing in the road, it looked like some kind of mangled black dog. I got about 15 feet from it. It contorted and looked all screwed up and looked right at me, and I swear it had red, glowing eyes. It looked like it was snarling, and once I was so close, it looked like a mini version of the dog things from Ghostbusters, except much uglier. I wasn't going to stop, so I hit it. I felt the slow impact, and I heard this scream that turned my blood into ice, like nothing I have ever heard. It hurt my ears, it was so loud. I sped up and started running about 55 miles per hour and just got the hell out of there. After a while, I make it to a truck stop or maybe a rest area. I can't remember. It's morning and plenty of sunlight let me see what damage had happened. I got out of the truck and I walked to the front, and my bumper was bent in very slightly. Otherwise, there was no damage. There was this black, sludgy looking shit, like it's blood or something. I checked all around for any remnants or something. Absolutely nothing other than that black sludgy stuff on the bumper. I have no idea what I hit, what was running alongside my truck, or why it picked me to screw with. I got a couple more stories too. In 2006, I had been driving on my own for about a month or so, and I had a load of nice leather office chairs going to Maine. This was no big deal. I got about 1,500 miles out of it. I ended up getting deeper and deeper in the woods on some little road that looked in way too good of a shape for the area, very new looking and smooth. I can't find this place at all. The directions I got were garbage. I call the place and get proper directions and find out that I actually am on the road I need to be on, to just keep going until I find something, they told me. I make it eventually to a tall chain link fence and a gate that's blocking the whole road, connected to a chain link fence running into the woods on either side. A man in a military uniform came out of nowhere and hopped up on my steps, one hand on my mirror, and knocked on my window. Scared the hell out of me. He asked for the paperwork. I gave it to him, and he opened the gate and told me to drive forward about 300 feet and stop. I did, and another soldier came up and told me to give him my driver's license, any matches or lighters, smokes, cameras, phones, or whatever. I thought, okay, not sure what's going on at this point. He tells me to follow the road until I came to a white building and back into the dock. I follow his instructions. I find the building, a white building, with black windows and a single door. I hop out of the truck to open the trailer doors. I back in. I get back out of the truck and just walk around for a few minutes when a guy in a suit walks up to me and asks me what the hell I'm doing. I told him I was just stretching, and I asked what this place was. He just said it's a government building, very deadpan. I asked why there are army guys around. He told me to get back in my truck, and personally, I didn't want to get sent to some black hole prison, so I get back in my truck. As I look around, this place is eerily quiet and completely surrounded by thick trees. I sit in my truck and I notice that there are people moving in the woods. I assumed that they are more army guys. Weird, but whatever. I watch way too many movies. As I'm leaving, I look into the woods and I see them staring at me about 40 feet in. I could barely see them. They're all black, about 7 or 8 feet tall, totally motionless, but I can feel them staring. There is about 15 of them scattered throughout the woods. I get about a mile down the road. The woods are still thick. I stop to smoke a cigarette, and I see them, 15 feet in the woods, staring at me. I just sat there, smoking and staring at them. I could feel this eerie, horrible sense that if I didn't leave, I could be in serious trouble. I tossed my smoke out, and I took off. I got paid and never went back. No one that I worked with had even heard of this place or where it is. It has been so long that I couldn't even tell you where in Maine that it was. It was nothing too scary, but it was spooky just not knowing what the hell was staring at me. Now this one happened circa April 2008. I was in New Mexico, out in the middle of nowhere. I thought it was an amazing area, so I stopped to get out and just look around, take a break, and relax. I was sitting on this big-ass rock, eating a sandwich. It was about 7 to 8 p.m., slowly getting dark. I was just listening to the wind and occasional coyote or other animals. Becoming one with nature for an hour or so was nice. About halfway through my break, I heard footsteps, bipedal footsteps, coming from behind. I stood up and turned around to see if maybe there was a meth head coming up on me or something. I looked around, and I could hear footsteps coming closer, but I didn't see anyone. At this point, I was practically shitting myself. I decided that the only sane thing I could do was just yell random shit, like I was a crazy person. Maybe I would scare him or her or it off. The footsteps stopped. My heart was still moving about 6,000 times a second. And then I saw something much larger than a coyote running around about 100 yards off in the distance. It looked like a big-ass dog with no tail. I was pretty much frozen in fear. I could see it seriously hauling ass, running around, like it was blind and looking for me. I couldn't even hear the wind. It was like complete and utter silence. I then heard the sound of something running behind me. I spun around as fast as I could, and I saw something go by me so fast that it was a blur. I then screamed and threw my sandwich and tried to jump my fat ass off this rock. I fell down and turned around on my back and ass and saw this black shadow thing standing there. I screamed, and it just kind of dissipated, and behind it there was a coyote, just a single lone coyote looking at me, not in a threatening way, like it saved me or protected me. I was shaking like a can of paint in one of those paint mixer things at the hardware store. I stood up, and this coyote was just looking at me. I felt a rush of relief and safety. I turned around and walked back to my truck. I got in it, and this little coyote had followed me. I got some lunch meat out and tossed it to the coyote. It scarfed it up and then took off. I have no idea what was running around. Maybe some feral hogs had made their way to New Mexico. Who knows? The shadowy figure, I don't know. Maybe when I fell off the rock, I hit my head. I just know that I was scared shitless of what was running around. There's probably a reasonable explanation, but it's still really weird and creepy. So before I end the video, I would like to tell a story that didn't happen to me, but one that was told to me when I used to work as a receiver. I generally don't talk about any jobs I've had or do have, but I figured this one was pretty relevant to the video. So, this would have been a few years ago now. 2018 comes to mind, but it could have been 2019. Either way, so where I was receiving for had closed, but since the truck hadn't come yet, I had to stay late, and the truck was late by about 45 minutes. Now, the guy finally comes, and I'm like, oh great, I have to stay another hour to unload this thing. So the driver comes in, and he's pale, which is unlike him. He's usually super tanned and very chipper. I break the seal to unload the truck. He asks me, straight up, if there's anything weird between where I am and this other place that does the same stuff that's about an hour and change away. I say that I've seen some things on this highway, but I ask what he means. He says about 20 minutes outside of another village, he saw another truck. It had its four-way flashers on, and the driver's side door was open. He slowed down to a crawl, looking for the driver on the road, thinking maybe the truck broke down or something, and he was trying to get service. But there was no driver in sight. He stops the truck and starts looking around with the high beams on. He sees the driver of the truck face down on the side of the road in front of the other truck. He knows the driver, so he gets out to see if he's okay. The driver is a grocery truck driver, and he wakes up, freaking out. He's talking about shadows. By this point, the driver that I'm talking to got a little overwhelmed, not crying or anything, just kind of started breathing heavily, wasn't able to keep himself composed. So I told him to take a seat on the stairs and just kind of have some water, take a breath. And then I went and did my job, which is unloading the truck. I did this in record time, basically, because I really wanted to hear what happened. The guy says that the other truck driver was delirious, didn't know what time it was or anything. The cops were already on their way. By this time, it was after 9 p.m. I know because that's when place I work at closes, and I had to stay and wait for him. I called him. He didn't pick up. He thought that the guy that was on the road was just off his shit on drugs, which is sad because he was a recovering addict of various pills and stuff. So we helped him back up and toward his truck. The guy is still rambling about shadows and seeing stuff. The trucker realizes that the clock on this guy's truck is stuck at 5:03. Now for me, I thought that trucks were like cars and stuff, and sometimes the clock just loses time. But he said that this doesn't usually happen because the time is tracked or something like that. I don't quite remember, but he explained it to me why it was super weird. I just nodded my head because I'm just the receiver and I deal with people that tell me weird stories all the time. But anyways, he said that he didn't want to be left alone in case they came back. He said, "Who in the F is they? You're all kinds of screwed up." But the other driver was super dehydrated and just downed like 2 500ml bottles of water. He said he was driving on the highway number, and suddenly his truck started losing power. He lost control of the steering, and it just went off onto the shoulder of the road, just like he was just parking there. So he's freaking out by this point. He gets out of his truck, thinking that something is terribly wrong with the vehicle. He says the last thing that he remembered was 4 shadowy figures coming out from the woods by his truck. Then he wakes up in horrible pain. His whole skeleton hurts, is the way he put it. The trucker guy at my place said that he helped him back into his truck, told him to get some rest, and since the cops were already on their way, just try to leave out the part about the shadows. Anyways, he kept driving. And then 20 minutes on the highway, this is about 25 minutes from my place. And a vague description of this highway is that it's a really terribly paved road that trucks often use, and it goes through very deep woods and swamps. It's a pretty much straight highway the whole way with very little turns. You just gotta watch the potholes or else you'll lose a friggin' tire. Anyways, the guy at my place told me that he was driving and his truck just started losing power. No matter if he hit the gas, it just revved and the engine didn't really do much else. He said that his truck stopped just on the road and suddenly he felt paralyzed, like he couldn't move. He wanted to, but his body wouldn't listen to him. And then he said that similar things, these weird shadowy figures, came up on the road and tried to open the door. He said that they looked like people, but they were just the shadows of them. The door was locked. One of them just stood there on the step for a few minutes, looking at him, just blacker than black against the dark forest. At some point, the engine roars to life. The shadowy thing jumps off the step, and they just go back into the woods. The delivery goes totally normal after this, and I live on this highway that he was speaking of, and I've never seen anything like that. I don't know what it could have been. All I know is that it wouldn't surprise me to find cryptids in the deep woods back here. You know, like I said, there's been weird stuff anyways. But yeah, that was in 2018, 2019. And I think I stayed at the store until after 10 o'clock just to hear the whole story. The guy never really showed up high or on any kind of drugs. He also never told me any other stories like this before. It was just that one night. So, make of that what you will. And with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. Hello! My other cat has decided to join me. So, with that, I hope you enjoyed the video. And if you had a favorite one of these, let me know which one it was down in the comments. And if you would like to donate to the channel or send in your own story, there's links in the description that you can do that to or with. And yeah, thank you for pulling up a stump. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.